Part 43. Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 422. The command room of the Royal Navy's West Fleet is an important military location and cannot be entered without permission. Viscount Paulus, as the falcon attendant of Count Golden Anchor, is in charge of many secret affairs of the castle and is only responsible to the Count. Where he appears and what he wants to do, others are not qualified to interfere. Even unnecessary attention would be considered as prying into the Earl's secrets. Rudolph followed Viscount Paulus and walked toward the war room unobstructed. After entering the war room, Rudolph saw that there was only one officer in the war room, and it was the officer Rudolph had met before, the Chief of Staff of the Western Fleet, Major General Alberto. Seeing Paulus come in, Alberto turned his head and continued to stare at the sand table in front of him. The sand table realistically restores the landforms around Port Coder, including the city, mountains, and sea. There are also many small flags on the sand table, red or blue, representing the armies of both sides. Viscount Paulus whispered, "Mr. Rudolph, you only have 3 minutes. You can choose a route that suits you according to your ability." The small blue flags representing the Constitutional Army were planted densely, and 2 lines of defense were built outside the port of Coder. Even on the top of the mountain, the Constitutional Army deployed troops. "Mr. Rudolph, you have to be careful. The Constitutional Army has airships. The airships gather very quickly. A lot of airships can be gathered in a certain place in a short time. The saturation attack of the airships is what gives us the most headache." Rudolph looked at the sand table and quickly found a route. This route was close to the coast. The Constitutional Army did not set up defense forces on the coast. There are 3 red flags planted on the light blue sand representing the sea, where the Royal Navy has deployed 3 fleets. It seems that the Constitutional Army is afraid of the firepower of the Royal Navy fleet. The Constitutional Army closest to the seaside is more than 10 kilometers away. Along the seaside, the Constitutional Army can only assemble troops from one direction at most, which is a good route. After remembering the appearance of the sand table again, Rudolph followed Viscount Paulus and left the war room. However, after the 2 of them left, Major General Alberto took out 2 blue flags and threw them on the coast. He took back the 3 red flags on the sea. This was the real deployment of troops. After a long time, the door of the war room opened again, and Viscount Paulus once again stood in front of Major General Alberto. "Major General, Master Caleb will remember your help. It's just a little effort." Alberto sighed in his heart. No wonder his father said that you should never underestimate the blood of the nobles, but Caleb did not hesitate to use the credibility of the Golden Anchor family to cut off his brother's wings. He said, "What I'm concerned about is the Ancient Sea Wizards Association really willing to stop helping the Constitutional Army?" "Yes, Chief of Staff. Wells, the level 6 wizard of the Ancient Sea Wizards Association, said that they are willing to cooperate with us. The condition of cooperation is that we lead the furnace into his trap. The immortal duo is not that easy to deal with." "Are you sure?" Paulus smiled. "Why should we deal with the undead duo? The Constitutional Army and the wizards will take action on their own. At most, our reconnaissance was not good and we did not discover the Constitutional Army's defense there. Indeed, the best we can do is have a poor detection." When Rudolph returned to his residence, he saw Kedrick waiting for him in his room. When they met again, Kedrick seemed to be a different person. He was wearing a gorgeous Viscount dress, which was the most serious dress he wore when he was conferred the title at the banquet just now. Kedrick didn't have time to change clothes and came to see Rudolph immediately. "Mr. Rudolph, do you really want to leave?" "Yes, Kedrick, I want to go back to my hometown," Rudolph said. "Just like you will not leave the Golden Anchor family easily, I also have a family, but my home has never belonged to me. I was born there and grew up there, but everything there is dominated by a few people. Both of us regard the other as a worm, and our differences are as great as enemies. I seem to understand this feeling, just like I grew up in a castle, but I am destined to leave that castle one day. Rudolph suddenly said, "Kedrick, please take us on a journey. I have something I want to talk to you about on the way." "Okay, it just so happens that I also have something to ask you." Rudolph didn't hide it either, "Sending us there may be risky." "It doesn't matter what the risk is, Mr. Rudolph, this is Coderport, and the Golden Anchor family is the leader here." Rudolph narrowed his eyes slightly, thinking that the risk comes from within the Golden Anchor family. "Kedrick, when you and I leave, we must be very secretive and not let anyone else know. I hope we can pass through the war zone smoothly." "Okay, Mr. Rudolph." After Kedrick left, Cooper asked doubtfully, "Why do you want Kedrick to send us away? Can't we leave on our own?" "After I came back from the war room of the Royal Navy, I was a little uneasy. It seemed that something had gone wrong. In the city of Port Coder, no matter how big the problem is, it will be solved if I take Kedrick with me." Rudolph and his party did not delay and left the port of Coder under the cover of night. In the palace late at night, an inconspicuous old man stood at the door of the Count's bedroom. The attendant's expression changed drastically, and he immediately rang the bell to wake up the sleeping Earl. Count Palu, wearing pajamas, met the old man without missing a moment. "Mr. Child, have you divined anything?" The Count looked a little nervous, because the person in front of him was not an ordinary person, but Palu's childhood teacher and Palu's personal advisor. His more important identity was that he was Palu's word spirit, responsible for foreseeing danger for Palu, which was one of the reasons why Palu dared to persist in the port city of Kodari. Child's voice was very hoarse. "Palu, tonight's divination told me that you must do something tonight, otherwise you will suffer a painful loss." "Painful loss?" Palu asked hurriedly. "When tonight?" "I don't know." "Where did it happen?" "I don't know." "Palu, it's useless to ask more. The enemy's word spirit is also involved, which makes my divination very vague and I can't get the details at all." Palu looked serious. "Okay, I understand, teacher Child, please go back and rest first." After Child left, Palu did not feel sleepy at all, and went directly to a building next door, which was the operations room of the Royal Navy's Western Fleet. A few minutes after Count Palu entered the operations room, Rear Admiral Alberto, Chief of Staff of the Western Fleet, hurried to the operations room. "Count, is there any urgent combat mission?" Count Palu stared at the sand table and found that the layout of both sides was the same as last week, and there was no change. Count Palu asked, "Is there a large-scale troop mobilization of the Constitutional Army?" "No. Our reconnaissance is very comprehensive. If the enemy has a large-scale troop mobilization, we will definitely know in advance. Confirm with the intelligence department again and send out all the reconnaissance troops. We must know the movements of the Constitutional Army." Alberto nodded in response, but saw that Count Palu had no intention of leaving. He sat at the main seat at the conference table, and it seemed that he was ready to wait for military intelligence overnight. "Early tomorrow morning, notify Commander Nahar of the Eastern Fleet that the joint meeting has been cancelled and an urgent military situation has occurred here. Tonight, don't disturb them tonight, let them have a good rest." Hearing the Count's order, Alberto felt a strong sense of uneasiness in his heart. There have been cases in the past where Count Palu had foreseen certain large-scale military operations in advance, and all of his intuitions came true. However, Alberto was very sure that the Constitutional Army had been very quiet in the past few days and there would be no major movements. What went wrong? Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 423. Kedrick was not qualified to know the secret contents of the Western Fleet, so no one came to tell Kedrick how tense the current situation was. Commander Nahar, who was the guest, suddenly woke up from his sleep and stood by the window. He noticed the messengers in the palace, many of them running around. Nahor's face was serious. Is there any big military operation? Could it be that the constitutional army came over? The first thing he noticed was the lit war room, which was the command center of the Western Fleet. The messengers were constantly entering and exiting the command center. In the suburbs of Port Coder, Rudolph and his group of 5 people were leaving the city. Yvonne sighed, "It's so quiet." Compared with the luxury of the palace, the suburbs are silent because there is no one here. There were bombed-out ruins everywhere. How could there be anyone in the ruins? The road was full of craters, and several people walked in curves to avoid falling into the craters. Ursula, Kedrick's little wizard, explained, once the Constitutional Army's attack was so crazy that they hit the outskirts of Port Côte d'Or. If the Count hadn't personally brought the cavalry over, the Royal Marines would have almost lost the battle. Street fighting with the enemy is the most brutal, and it is also very detrimental to the cavalry. Rudolph looked around at the houses with half of their walls remaining. He wanted to ask, what is the difference between street fighting and field fighting? After walking for half an hour, Rudolph suddenly asked everyone to hide. They saw a group of scouts walking cautiously toward the eastern suburbs. No matter how careful the scouts were, they could not detect Rudolph. After the scouts left, Rudolph and his party continued on their way. What Rudolph didn't know was that on the eastern outskirts of Port Côte d'Or, along the coastline, 2 regiments of the Constitutional Army were stationed. These 2 regiments had strong firepower and were fully prepared with artillery and rockets. These troops dug trenches to prevent cavalry charges and to hide themselves. Vanya's incarnation bat is wandering around, spying on distant intelligence for Rudolph, but the incarnation bat has not yet reached the 2 regiments of the Constitutional Army. Rudolph and Cooper said, "Actually, we are more suitable for activities on land. The targets of sea-going ships are too big, and sea-going ships always have to go to the port to replenish. Once they enter the port, they are easily recognized. You see, when we come to land, it's hard for others to find us." Cooper nodded, "Indeed, it is easier to hide on land. I can also hide in the soil." Ursula carefully observed Rudolph in front of her. She learned from Master Kedrick that Mr. Rudolph had become a level 5 wizard, and he was still a level 5 wizard that contained the characteristics of 2 southern constellations. This impressed Ursula very much. After just 1 trip to the sea, she crossed the most important level of a wizard and became a wizard of the south. Like the chaotic city of Port Côte d'Or, the Constitutional Army dozens of kilometers away received a spy message an hour later. The Royal Navy was moving. For a time, the headquarters of the Constitutional Army also fell into chaos. They knew that the ships of the Eastern Fleet had entered the port of Côte d'Or. Could it be that the arrival of the Eastern Fleet gave Count Golden Anchor the courage to counterattack? Is the Royal Navy planning a night attack? The Constitutional Army's intelligence reconnaissance force also spread out to find out what happened. After the reconnaissance forces fought, widespread casualties quickly occurred. Messages were sent back to the headquarters one after another, and Major General Alberto, the experienced chief of staff, quickly discovered the problem. The investigation teams of the double counterattack are all conducting investigations in a defensive posture, and they are trying to find ways to investigate the opponent's troop movements. When the troops attack and defend, the focus of reconnaissance will be subtly different. Alberto believes in his own judgment. The Constitutional Army has no intention of attacking. Instead, it deploys many scouts in their weak points to prepare for the attack of the Royal Navy. The same goes for the Royal Navy, which focuses its reconnaissance on the western suburbs of the city where it is more vulnerable to attack. Both sides immediately strengthened their defenses. Who are they defending? Alberto was puzzled. Could it be that Count Palu overreacted and that the Count's information was wrong? What was the reason that led the Earl to think that there would definitely be a big battle tonight? Alberto suddenly remembered something and quickly left the war room. Outside a remote house in the palace, the guard saw the person coming and was startled. He quickly opened the door without stopping him. Major General Alberto, the chief of staff, enjoys the power second only to the count. No one can stop him wherever he wants to go, even if it belongs to Viscount Paulus and the Falcon Squire. Paulus handles secret affairs for the count. Place. Viscount Paulus was also startled when he saw the arrival of the chief of staff, and quickly stood up from his chair. The wizard discovered it so quickly. Paulus had a look of surprise on his face, he didn't expect it to be so fast. Alberto had a sullen face and stared at Paulus, who felt a little panicked. Viscount Paulus, I don't believe that I would make such a big mistake in my command. For 2 whole hours, I didn't know what went wrong, Alberto said. I've thought about it for a long time, and the only thing I did wrong was helping you secretly and helping you deceive the furnace. As the Earl's falconer, I think you should know that tonight is unusual. So, do you have anything to add about why framing that wizard would cause us huge losses? A huge loss? Yes, these are the Earl's exact words. After Count Palu was promoted to a level 6 knight, his prestige was high, and no one would doubt the Count's judgment. Since the Count said that there would be huge losses tonight, there would be losses. However, Paulus did not know what went wrong until a servant reported intelligence to Paulus. The servant's duty was to supervise the situation inside the castle. My Lord Viscount, Miss Ursula, the castle's tutor, left her residence tonight and disappeared. And the servant looked at Alberto, not knowing whether to say the next words. Hurry up! What else is going on? Hearing the Viscount's order, the servant hurriedly said, and there was also a problem with Master Kedrick. The servant gambled with others and did not serve the master. We absolutely did not mean to monitor the master, but the appearance of the master's servant in the casino proved that the master did not need the servant's service tonight. The servant had already arranged a big drama in his mind. Master Kedrick and the tutor Miss Ursula seemed to have some unspeakable secrets. This is nothing for a young nobleman. At the age of 16, he is the most curious, so it is necessary to know some biological knowledge. Gossip, not a small one, should be known to the falcon servant. Unlike the servant who was caught up in the romantic fantasy, Alberto instantly guessed the most terrible result. Master Kedrick might be with the furnace. He might be ambushed by the constitutional army. The loss mentioned by the Earl might be that he will lose a son. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 424. Who can find Master Kedrick? This is the answer Alberto and Paulus are most eager to get now. However, no one can help them. The investigation changed from targeting the Constitutional Army to searching for Kedrick, because the facts showed that the Constitutional Army tonight was also confused and was reacting passively. As time went by, Alberto became more and more certain that the huge loss that the Earl was worried about might be that the Earl would lose a son, and a son with a promising future. Half an hour later, Paula stopped in front of Alberto and stared at Alberto with horrified eyes. Get out of the way! Viscount Paulus shouted, are you crazy? We did the hands and feet together. If the Count knows that we disobeyed his orders and did not let the furnace see the real deployment of troops, you and I will be punished. Alberto looked at Paulus as if he were a fool. Yes, you will indeed be punished, but if Kedrick dies tonight, you and I will both die. Paulus was anxious. The most important thing for us now is to find Kedrick, not to admit our mistakes. The next second, a violent airflow suddenly erupted in the room, and Albert actually took action directly in the palace. Paulus was completely unprepared, and he was no match for Alberto. He flew backwards and smashed the door. The door frame fell off the wall, and he himself fell on the lawn outside. The sound of the door breaking attracted many guards around. This is the Count's palace and the headquarters of the Royal Navy's Western Fleet. Who is doing this? In a cloud of dust, Alberto walked out of the cracked doorway. The guards came here, but Alberto did not continue moving forward. It was not the guards who asked Alberto to stop, but he saw Master Caleb. Master Caleb did not look at Paulus, who was injured and vomiting blood, but stared at Alberto. Chief of Staff, what happened? Alberto understood that Caleb must know something, and he said, there is some military information that needs to be known to the commander. He deliberately emphasized the Earl's other identity, commander of the Royal Navy's Western Fleet. This is a reminder to Caleb that what happens next is not only a family matter for the Golden Anchor family, but also a matter for the Royal Navy. It is impossible for the Earl to let his son die, but rashly launching a decisive battle with the Constitutional Army late at night will cause serious losses to the Royal Navy, and the newly formed balance of power may also be destroyed by tonight's action. Alberto didn't seem to care at all about the possible punishment he might receive. He was willing to provide Caleb with some help within the scope of his duties, but when it came to the Royal Navy, Alberto couldn't care less. Alberto comes from the royal capital and can be said to represent the attitude of the royal family, so he must correct his mistakes in time. Caleb understood that the chief of staff in front of him was determined and there was no way he could be kind tonight. Chief of Staff Alberto, I won't delay your military duties. I'm here to capture Paulus. He betrayed the Golden Anchor family and actually framed Kedrick. Hearing Caleb's words, Alberto didn't say much and left quickly. He didn't care about the strife within the Golden Anchor family. Paulus, who was on the ground, was already injured. Hearing Caleb's words, he became even more despairing. The recovery of his injuries slowed down for a while, and the change in his state of mind made the operation of his ultimate strength much more stagnant. Caleb said nothing, just stared at Paulus. His attendants acted quickly and drove away the surrounding guards, leaving only Caleb and Paulus within dozens of meters. Either I protect your family and let your son inherit your title in the future, or you and your family will be destroyed together. Paulus's eyes were downcast. It was a bad alternative. Or, he takes all the responsibility on his own and rests his hope on Caleb's conscience. Or, reveal Caleb and be silenced by the Count. The Count will not let the family scandal spread, so he has no way out. Finally, Paulus raised his head and said, it was me who wanted to seize the witchcraft of the furnace and made such a big mistake. Caleb had a cold face and motioned to the attendant next to him to catch Paulus. Alberto came to the war room and confessed to Count Palu everything that had just happened without any reservation. In other words, Paulus found you first and asked you to deploy fake troops to deceive the furnace. Yes, Your Majesty. The forge realized something, but he didn't say anything and took Kedrick away instead. Yes, Your Majesty. Palu didn't mean to blame him at all. He immediately figured out everything that happened here. Kedrick not only shines in the Eastern Fleet, but he can immediately attack the logistics of the Constitutional Army through the furnace, which means that Kedrick will soon make a big contribution. This credit is even more important than sinking a Constitutional Army warship at sea, and it will definitely be rewarded with a higher level. If Kedrick only made achievements in the Eastern Fleet, some people in the castle would not be anxious. But if Kedrick could influence the port of Cordur, some people would become anxious. They did not hesitate to use false information to deceive the forge. If the forge died at the hands of the Constitutional Army and the ancient sea wizards, it would be equivalent to cutting off Kedrick's most important outer edge. It would be good if Forge was not dead. The cooperation between Forge and Kedrick would no longer be as close as it is now, and there would be suspicion and rifts between the two parties. The calculations here even made Palu somewhat relieved. Caleb's plan was good. No matter what, Kedrick was the loser. However, All this changed fundamentally because the furnace took Kedrick away. Of course, Kedrick could not follow the furnace to the Carolingian kingdom, but just sending the furnace a distance could put Kedrick in great danger, which is why Mr. Child suddenly got a vague divination result. Not long after, Caleb entered the war room with Paulus tied up. "Father." Paulus framed the furnace for the magic weapon of the furnace. "Now there is bad news. Kedrick may follow the furnace and enter the encirclement of the constitutional army." "Is that so?" Count Paulu looked at his proud son and said with some disappointment. "You are all excellent, and each one is more thoughtful than the other. However, this is the promise I made to the furnace. Among you, have any of you considered my credibility?" In this matter, the will of Count Anchor was distorted, and more importantly, Count Anchor lost face and broke his promise. It is not that promises cannot be broken. Some promises are made to let the enemy relax their vigilance. However, Count Paulu did not think so, and he also became a victim. Faced with his father's questioning, Caleb did not know how to answer, and his veins bulged. "Accept the challenge. The plan of the furnace is more important than you think. Just to destroy the supply of war materials to the Carolingian kingdom, the furnace cannot be sent to the Wizards Association tonight." Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 425. Different from the solemn atmosphere in the war room, Rudolph and his team were slowly walking along the coastline, away from the city of Port Coder. Cooper yawned and asked, "Rudolph, is this line safe?" After becoming a level 5 corpse from the past, Cooper didn't need to sleep, and he couldn't sleep, so he usually became very sleepy. This kind of sleepiness was very uncomfortable, and he was always in a state where he obviously wanted to sleep, but couldn't. "The route is very safe. The latest sand table I saw in the war room shows that the Constitutional Army has no troops deployed in this direction. There is no need for us to be anxious." Rudolph did not walk quickly, deliberately slowing down the team. The sea breeze brought a wisp of noise. Rudolph turned his head and glanced at the sea. There seemed to be some movement on the sea in the distance. He looked up at the sky in the distance again, and there seemed to be some movement in the sky. However, Rudolph was not worried at all. Kedrick had just become the Viscount of the Earldom of Golden Anchor and could not die here. Kedrick was his talisman. After walking for more than 10 minutes, Kedrick suddenly said, "Mr. Rudolph, I feel something is strange." "Is it weird?" "Yes, this place is not far from the city of Port Cotter. Even if there is no battle, the reconnaissance troops will patrol here regularly, but for half an hour, not a single team of scouts has been seen." "Oh, I don't know. Maybe your scouts were exhausted the past few days and are resting now." 5 minutes later, Kedrick asked again, "Mr. Rudolph, I suddenly remembered that when we left Port Coder, there was a group of scouts heading in the same direction as us, but we didn't see them coming back. In other words, they may have been attacked." "Really? That's so unfortunate," Rudolph reminded. "Kedrick, although you are a descendant of the Golden Anchor family, you do not belong to the Royal Navy's West Fleet, and you cannot intervene in the war here." Kedrick nodded. "Military discipline is very important. Even Count Naghur, the commander of the Eastern Fleet, cannot interfere in the military affairs here. There is a road by the sea. This road is not smooth." Several people are chatting and walking forward. Only Kedrick is becoming more and more silent. Until a certain moment, a low muffled sound came from the sea, clearly breaking the tranquility of the night. "It's artillery. I heard you right. The Royal Navy and the Constitutional Navy are fighting at sea." Rudolph turned back and said, "If you are in a hurry, you can go back first." Kedrick shook his head, "It's okay. I'm just one of the representatives of the Eastern Fleet. I'm really not suitable to interfere in the military affairs of the Western Fleet. Especially since my brother Caleb is now a senior officer of the Eastern Fleet, he won't like to rush to express himself of me. At Kedrick's coming-of-age ceremony, he had already noticed the awkwardness of Caleb's elder brother. He could not mistake it. The disgust deep in Caleb's eyes almost made him lose control of his expression. They were all used to hypocritical aristocrats, so it was easy to tell whether others were genuinely happy or forcing a smile. If he were to show off again at this time, he would definitely receive even greater hostility. Even the relatively dull Ursula felt that the atmosphere had become tense. Rudolph suddenly remembered something, and he asked, "Kedrick, do you have any plans regarding the evil god cult? The Knights and the Alchemy Council are fighting to the death, and in the end, don't let the evil god cult take advantage of them. No, our king, Carloman 16, has not moved. No matter how fierce the war is on the front line, His Majesty and his royal knights have not moved," Kedrick said with confidence. "No one can defeat the king and his loyal royal knights unless the evil god himself comes. In other words, are you fighting with the Alchemy Council like this now, or are you giving up a king and the most elite knights?" "Yes. If His Majesty the King comes to the front line in person, all the senators in the upper house of the Alchemy Parliament must be mobilized. Neither the Royal Army nor the Royal Navy is the strongest armed force in the kingdom. The Royal Knights directly under His Majesty the King are the kingdom's the biggest trump card. My second and third brothers both serve in the Royal Knights. When they left home, one was a level 3 knight and the other was a level 2 knight. They were just ordinary cavalry at the lowest level when they first entered the knighthood. Even the first heirs of some nobles will enter the Royal Knights and receive the most rigorous training. If I hadn't been promoted to level 4 knight, I think I would have gone to the Royal Knights, where I could make friends with the royal family and receive more rigorous training. Emperor Mogwen in the far north, like those famous emperors in history, has the ability to confront the evil god head-on. Carloman 16, who is one level lower than the emperor, is the knight second only to the evil god." Kedrick continued, "If the evil god dares to set foot on the northern continent, then Emperor Mogwen will have a reason to go south. He will lead his troops straight to the Sarago Sea and drive the evil god out of the sea again." Speaking of knights, Kedrick's tone was full of glory. He firmly believed that neither the Alchemy Council nor the evil god could be the opponent of knights. "Does the Mogwen Empire have an agreement with other kingdoms? Once the evil god lands, they can go south." "Yes, there has always been such a consensus on the mainland. Once the evil god lands, everyone will unite behind the Knight Emperor and fight against the evil god together. But I don't know if this ancient agreement can still be obeyed by alchemists now." Kedrick continued, "If it weren't for the threat of the evil cult, how could the alchemical parliament be the opponent of His Majesty the King? Those senators." Rudolph suddenly looked at the sea in the distance, where there was a fierce exchange of fire, no longer a dull sound from a distance. Kedrick, who had military experience, immediately recognized what it was a landing battle. "The Royal Navy defeated the Constitutional Navy and landed in front of us." "But, Mr. Rudolph, didn't you say that there were no Constitutional Army troops in front?" Rudolph spread his hands. "Oh, Viscount Paulus took me to the Royal Navy operations room. Chief of Staff Albert showed me the latest troop deployment sand table. The sand table showed that there were indeed no Constitutional Army troops in front. Maybe, just now, the Constitutional Army suddenly mobilized a large number of troops and accidentally blocked us." Operations room, Paulus, Alberto. As smart as Kedrick was, he immediately thought of the worst possibility: "They are framing you." Rudolph smiled and said, "Don't think I'm so important. I'm just a wizard passing by. At most, I'm a wizard who can propose some cooperation to your father. How could I be targeted by so many people? Kedrick, I'm about to return to my hometown. I don't know when we will meet next time. I brought you out this time because I want to tell you a truth before I leave: never think too highly of others. They didn't frame me, but you." Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 426. In the faint sound of gunfire, Kedrick looked at the outline of Rudolph's figure, and felt more and more that what Rudolph said was true. Some people in the castle had united together, and they were plotting to frame him. After leaving the castle for a long time, Kedrick suddenly felt that the Golden Anchor Castle had become very unfamiliar. After standing for a long time, Kedrick asked, "What should I do, Mr. Rudolph?" "Tonight, before I leave, you will not be in danger, and you will need to rely on yourself in the future. Change your mindset as soon as possible. You have already held the coming-of-age ceremony. You are no longer a child in the castle, but a knight who can stand on your own." Rudolph stood in place, looking up at the front. As for the enemy tonight, others stood quietly behind Rudolph, waiting for Rudolph's next decision. The sound of gunfire in the distance became more and more intense, and even black spots could be seen floating in the night sky. That was the airship of the Constitutional Army. Judging from the number of airships, the Constitutional Army has deployed an exaggerated number of troops, with more than 30 airships. The battle was very fierce, and each airship fired groups of rockets. The news that Kedrick ran away from home was known to the castle. The actions of the Royal Navy proved that Kedrick's safety tonight was very important. This was the answer Rudolph wanted. A faint golden flame flickered between his eyebrows, and Larry's ability was borrowed by Rudolph to predict the next situation. In addition to the ability of 1-second prophecy, which can be called a plug-in, the divination ability of the level 5 word spirit has also been strengthened, from only being able to divine once a night to being able to divine 3 times a night. Divining 3 times means that the plan can be changed several times, and even if there is an accident, there is a chance to remedy it. Ursula noticed that Mr. Rudolph suddenly took out a parchment roll. On the opened parchment roll, there was a disc drawn. Ursula had seen that kind of disc before. It was a planetary trajectory disc, used to record the position of the planet. "Isn't that the thing of the word spirit?" Ursula was extremely envious. It seemed that Mr. Rudolph had obtained a magical weapon of word spirits, otherwise it would be impossible to master the power of word spirits. Ursula did not know the power of word spirits very well, because the number of word spirits was even less than that of wizards. There was only one word spirit in the earldom of Golden Anchor, and that was Mr. Child, the tutor of Count Palu when he was a child. Mr. Child lived in seclusion and rarely showed up. Most of the time, it was the Count who went to find Mr. Child. If Mr. Child took the initiative to go to the Count's study, it proved that something big was about to happen in the castle of Count Golden Anchor, and it was a very dangerous thing. She only heard Mr. Child mutter some phrases that she did not understand, such as the meridian passing through the palace, the south moon crossing the nadir, and the rising of the Neptune line. Ursula suddenly looked up at the starry sky, and she vaguely felt that some power was coming from the sky. The power of the constellation formed the star power, and the power of the planet formed the power of prophecy. Although the power of prophecy and the star power both came from the number of days, their natures were very different, and Ursula found it very difficult to perceive. In the Golden Anchor Castle, Mr. Child has a high tower, and sometimes this kind of power will appear in the high tower. She hurriedly looked at the parchment in Mr. Rudolph's hand. On the ring of the parchment, there appeared symbols of planets: the Sun, the Moon, Venus-, Mars-, Mercury-, Jupiter-, Saturn-, Uranus-, Neptune-, Pluto-. These symbols kept moving on the planetary line disk. Ursula couldn't understand it, but she felt it was very mysterious, even more mysterious than the ability of the wizard. After waiting for a long time, the symbol was finally fixed. Mr. Rudolph put away the parchment and said, "The divination results show that the Jupiter descent line passes through the area ahead. This means that we should have been in a very dangerous situation, but many people came forward to help us. Good luck, the front is safe, keep moving forward." You can't ask the word spirit why you can get the divination results. If you ask, even the word spirit itself doesn't know the principle. Anyway, Rudolph doesn't know why the Jupiter descent line passes by, which means someone helps him. Peeping into the secret of time, this matter cannot be said. Several people continued to move forward, and about half an hour later, they slowly came to the edge of the battlefield. Hiss. Rudolph took a breath of cold air and inhaled a mouthful of blood. The silver moonlight shone on the blood flow like a stream, and a war had just ended here. Judging from the traces on the battlefield, the Marines who raided from the sea had a fierce exchange of fire with a legion of the Constitutional Army. The crashed airship, the ignorant war horses standing beside their dead masters, the high smoke, the dead bodies on the ground, and the Marine cavalry who were still chasing the remnants not far away. Rudolph stood in front of a concrete fortification and said to Kedrick, "Look, this fortification has been built for at least half a year. Chief of Staff Alberto definitely knows that the Constitutional Army is stationed here. But he deceived me with the sand table. There are bad guys among the knights." Kedrick understood that these conspiracies were not aimed at Mr. Rudolph, but at him. If he hadn't come here with Mr. Rudolph would have been framed by Paulus and Alberto and rashly entered the defense zone of the Constitutional Army. Even if Mr. Rudolph and Mr. Cooper were very powerful and not so easy to die, they would have misunderstood Kedrick and a huge rift would have appeared in their relationship. He came here with Mr. Rudolph. If the Royal Navy did not take action, Kedrick, who had no cavalry, would probably have died here. Those groups of war airships may not necessarily target wizards and zombies, but they will definitely target level 4 knights. There is no one that alchemists hate more than level 4 knights. Mr. Rudolph is right. Never think too highly of others. He thought that he would work hard and find opportunities to fight hard, and finally get recognition from others. In fact, as long as he becomes dazzling, he will become a thorn in the eyes of others. Without the need for evidence, Kedrick understands that all this is arranged by his elder brother Caleb. While thinking about Caleb, Kedrick heard the sound of horse hooves. He looked in the direction of the sound, and his pupils suddenly shrank. Caleb was coming with 3 or 5 cavalrymen. "My dear brother. I finally see you here." Caleb got off his horse from a distance, proving that he was not aggressive at all. "You don't know how terrible the danger you are in. Paulus actually betrayed the Golden Anchor family. He actually sold Mr. Furness's information to the Constitutional Army and the Ancient Sea Wizard Association for the sake of magic weapons." Hearing the name of the Wizard Association, Rudolph turned his head and looked at the sea. He finally understood what the first divination brought him. Why was he afraid of the Constitutional Army, but he was afraid of the 6th level wizard of the Wizard Association who was also a wizard. Maybe other wizards can understand the characteristics of the Phoenix wizard from some channels. Caleb patted Kedrick's shoulder. Seeing that Kedrick did not respond and just stared at the battlefield blankly, Caleb, who knew he was boring, came to Rudolph again. Rudolph asked, "I wonder where Viscount Paulus is. If he likes any of my magic weapons, we can talk about it. It's not that I can't give it to him. No need, Mr. Furness. I have already executed Paulus. That's a pity. He didn't like my Phoenix magic weapon, did he? But he died before he got the magic weapon. Did he get the order wrong? How can he be resurrected? You are joking, Mr. Furness. My father said that his promise is more precious than gold. He will definitely do what he promised you, even if it means launching a fierce battle to fulfill his promise to you. Of course, I believe in the character of the Earl, just like I believe in the glory of the bright moon." Rudolph smiled and nodded, then turned to Kedrick and said, "Kedrick, then take me here. I believe that the enemies in front have been cleared by the Royal Navy. Good luck, my friend." "Good luck to you, my friend." Kedrick wanted to say something else, but Caleb ruined the atmosphere of farewell. Caleb couldn't wait to stand between Rudolph and Kedrick, pointing his finger at the sea. Please look there. A ship was fleeing in a hurry, away from the coast. The ship was flying the Pisces flag of the Wizard Association and a whale flag, on which a whale with a huge mouth was drawn. It was the ship of the Wizard Association, or the ship of Wells, the 6th level Xuanhuan whale wizard. The reason why the whale was fleeing was because it was followed by the flagship of the Royal Navy's Western Fleet. A javelin, with a white tail light, shot away. The ship of the Wizard Association was unable to resist the lance thrown by Count Palu himself, and was broken by a shot. A starlight whale suddenly appeared where the shipwreck was. This whale was several times larger than the ship, and it actually swallowed 2 pieces of the ship into its belly, and then sank into the sea in an instant. The second javelin followed closely, shooting directly under the sea surface, but unfortunately the distance was too far, and it was unclear whether it hit the starlight whale. Rudolph felt a little regretful. Even a level 6 Xuanhuan wizard couldn't do it. Why didn't he dare to face Count Palu directly? After shaking his head, Rudolph said, "I will come back, Saraguhe." Kedrick watched the figures of Rudolph and the other 2 go away, and finally disappeared behind the wreckage of an airship. When there was no one around, Rudolph spread his 4-winged bat wings and said, "Cooper, Yvonne, in order to catch the alchemists of Fabreau City off guard, I will use the bat wings to rush back first. You 2 will follow and be careful on the road." The bat wings of the flame spirit shone with golden light, and Rudolph flew away close to the ground. Sonic boom flashes are too much of an apostle's power to travel, and it is already very fast to travel directly with bat wings. Traveling with bat wings at night, resting and traveling with a carriage during the day, Rudolph is ready to return to Fabreau City alone at the fastest speed, like a venomous snake, to launch a fatal attack on the Alchemy Council of Fabreau City. Revenge must be taken, and on the way to revenge, you can also enjoy yourself. No, it's reminiscing about the past. In the early morning of the 3rd day, Rudolph ended a night of rushing and did a divination before dawn. The divination used the hair that Yanilla left him. They parted here more than a year ago. Rudolph wanted to know where Yanilla was now and how she was doing recently. The divination result surprised Rudolph very much. Yanilla and Mrs. Jessica were still in the city. The ability of the silver snake is very strong. If the silver snake does not want to cause trouble and simply hides, few people can find the silver snake. The people around them may become their tools. When the sun rose, the warm sunlight shone on the street. Yanilla, who had just opened the window, saw a figure at the end of the street. The man was wearing a robe and a hood, but Yanilla felt that the figure of the man was familiar. Yanilla shook her head and felt that it could not be him. He must be struggling to find the opportunity to become a level 5 wizard in the southern continent. Turning back to the dressing table, Yanilla looked a little dazed. That was her first lingering man, how could she not think of him? 10 seconds later, Yanilla looked up and prepared to put on makeup. She is now a 17-year-old girl, and she has to put on makeup every time she goes out. This is her mother's request. When she looked up, she suddenly saw a figure in the makeup mirror. He was slowly lowering his hood, revealing his appearance. Rudolph's slightly tired face was filled with a heartfelt smile of relief. Mrs. Jessica and Yanilla are both fine, which makes Rudolph very happy. Yanilla turned around and jumped up, hanging on Rudolph's neck. "Yanilla, I only have 4 hours of rest time." The wind-raising technique closed the window, the curtains were closed, and the room entered the dimness again, full of charming dimness. An hour later, Yanilla lay on Rudolph's shoulder and watched Rudolph fall asleep. Her face was half satisfied and half annoyed. Satisfied to see Rudolph again, annoyed that he didn't get promoted again. Last time, he got promoted just by talking, why didn't it work this time? When Rudolph woke up, he saw Yanilla still lying on his shoulder. "Give me another half an hour, Rudolph, please." Rudolph took the pocket watch and looked at the time. Okay, I'll go more at night and give you an extra hour. Yanilla kissed Rudolph's cheek excitedly, then leaned down and disappeared into the goose-down quilt. After a round of verbal battles, Yanilla was so good at talking that Rudolph felt his lower abdomen empty again and again. Yanilla, I will go back to Fabro City and stay there for a while. Wait for me for a month, and when I'm ready, you can also go back to Fabro City. After Rudolph left, Yanilla went downstairs to have lunch. At the dinner table, Yanilla asked, Mother, why was it easy to get promoted last time, but not this time? Mrs. Jessica smiled and said, because Rudolph was very emotional last time, he had just experienced the death of his best friend, you could easily capture his emotions and conquer him. Now you have been separated for more than a year, you have grown up a lot, Rudolph must have experienced a lot in the southern continent, you can't accurately grasp his emotions. Therefore, for Silver Snake, companionship is also necessary. Short-term charm only consumes the power of charm for Silver Snake, and long-term companionship can make Silver Snake understand the heart of a man better. When mentioning Claude, Mrs. Jessica looked depressed. Then let's go back to Fabro City too. Wait for Rudolph to send news, wait for him to establish a certain foundation in Fabro City, then we can go back to Fabro City. 2 days later, Rudolph was already standing on the outskirts of Fabro City, staring at the familiar yet unfamiliar Fabro City in the distance. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 427. Since Larry can appear in the form of a flame spirit, divination has become a very convenient thing for Rudolph. The power of prophecy surged from the center of his eyebrows, turned into a flame, and then led the power of the planet to light up his way forward. Staring at Fabro City, Rudolph did a divination before entering Fabro City. In my hometown, bathing and burning incense can increase the accuracy of divination. Now the conditions are limited, so why not wash your hands with rainwater? The cold autumn rain fell around, Rudolph raised his hand and let the rain fall on his palm until his hands were completely wet. The cold wind blew, making him feel even colder, and also made Rudolph much more sober. He took out a parchment roll, and the power of the planet fell on the parchment roll. The symbol representing the planet kept moving, creating a planetary trajectory line disk on the parchment roll. Neptune Ascendant. The divination results showed that the front was where dreams came true. Dreams come true, this is not simply beneficial to oneself, but the deepest desire in the heart becomes a reality, a good divination result. Abel, I don't know if you are panicking or not. Divination is not good for you. Closing the parchment, Rudolph felt that Abel might not panic, because he didn't know that Rudolph had returned to Fabro City. It took more than a month to travel from Fabro City to Port Coterie City by carriage. But it took Rudolph only 5 days to rush back to Fabro City from Port Coterie City. In order to make the attack sudden, Rudolph had a little time, well, he only spent a few hours with Yanilla, which doesn't count. As a man, can't he enjoy himself? Raising his foot, Rudolph walked towards Fabro City. Fabro City in the distance was quiet and there was nothing unusual. Just after a few steps, Rudolph stepped into a mud pit. Pulling out the shoes filled with water from the mud pit, he couldn't help cursing a few times. Since the mining of the Ruhr mining area began, the road conditions in Fabro City have deteriorated rapidly, and there are roads damaged by trucks everywhere. On the outskirts of Fabro City, Rudolph slowly moved forward in the drizzle. This time he was much more careful and avoided the puddles. This place was a little different from the Fabro City in his memory. Raindrops hit the stone floor, creating a misty mist. Rudolph stepped on the stone road, and his heels brought up scattered water drops, like a traveler who was about to go home, not caring about the mud or the rain. During the Constitutional War, the city walls representing the nobility were demolished by the Constitutional Army, and the boundaries of the city were very vague. At first there were only scattered houses, and then there were some two-story houses. I don't know when Rudolph entered the city of Fabreau. After entering the city of Fabreau, Rudolph's heartbeat accelerated unconsciously. The smooth stone road in his memory disappeared, and many floor tiles were crushed. The municipal department did not come to replace it, and I don't know what the municipal department is doing. Did they invest all their resources in the Ruhr mining area? One after another, iron pillar street lamps, many of which only have iron pillars left, no street lamps. On the buildings along the street, there are Rococo-style pilasters with intricate floral decorations carved on the capitals. The windows between the pilasters are sealed with wooden boards. All the houses with sealed windows are inhabited by blood servants or low-level vampires. Less than 2 years after the end of the Blood Mist Night, at most only level 1 vampires will appear. No matter how talented the vampires are, they cannot be promoted quickly in a short period of time. The long lifespan of the vampires comes at a price. Their quality of life is not high, and promotion requires a long blood coffin sleep. Seeing the blood servants' houses, Rudolph thought of Sam, who unfortunately became a blood servant. I don't know how he is now. I left him an ancient bronze coffin. I don't know if he has entered the second long sleep. Rudolph did not contact his friends in Fabreau City to prevent the news of his return to Fabreau City from leaking out. Perhaps the street lights here are severely damaged because there are more blood servants here, and blood servants do not need street lights at night. The doors and windows on the second floor were all sealed, causing the balcony to become a decoration, and no blood servant would stand on the balcony. The iron railings on the balcony were rusted, and no one cared about them anymore. Unfortunately, Rudolph had no time to stop and reminisce, he needed to commit a crime first. It seems that the derogatory word committing a crime should not be used to describe what is about to happen, making Rudolph look like a villain. Forget it, don't deny it, Rudolph is a villain. For this city, Rudolph will become the biggest villain in the coming days. I hope the city can adapt to the intensity brought by Rudolph. After passing the suburbs of the Dordo district, Rudolph finally saw a figure on the road. The autumn rain made there were few pedestrians on the road. It took more than 10 steps to meet a person wearing a raincoat and hurrying on the road. Occasionally, someone would be very close to Rudolph, and Rudolph saw blood-red pupils from their raincoats. This is a blood servant, that is a blood servant, and the next one is still a blood servant. The policies of the Alchemy Council are implemented very thoroughly. There is no better tool than a blood servant. A little blood can make them work for a week. They are very quiet during the day and will not cause trouble. At night, when the counselors fall asleep, these blood servants can work all night. Perhaps after Rudolph left, the Alchemy Council held several small blood mist nights and created more blood servants. Otherwise, it cannot explain why Rudolph did not meet any ordinary people. However, there is another possibility. This place is located on the outskirts of Fabreau City and is a gathering place for blood servants. At a certain intersection, Rudolph finally met someone who was not a blood servant. 2 patrolmen, holding batons, patrolled the blocks assigned to them. The moment he saw the patrolman, Rudolph was suddenly moved. Perhaps there are still people working hard for Fabreau City, just like Claude before. The rain this autumn is really cold. Yes, sometimes the rain in autumn is colder than the snow in winter. I don't know if there will be snow this year. It actually snowed last winter. This is the first time I have seen such heavy snow in Fabreau City since I was a child. So many things happened last year, and it seems that snow is not a big deal. A patrolman wanted to smoke, but found that the diesel lighter could not be lit. Damn, the lighter is broken. The patrolman couldn't help but shudder. A hooded man passed by and raised his hand to hand over a box of matches. The patrolman was stunned, took the matches, and then watched the man in the robe and cloak leave without saying a word. It's not easy. Some citizens actually took the initiative to hand us matches. Our reputation is so bad that sometimes I even hate myself. My daughter doesn't want to say her father is a patrolman at school. My son is not as good as my son in this respect. My son always bullies others at school because I am a patrolman. It's better to bully others than to be bullied. That's right. People who bully others live better everywhere. If you want to live well, you have to learn to bully others. The two patrolmen were getting farther and farther away. Their voices were getting lower and lower. Rudolph continued to walk forward. Rudolph had good hearing. Now he regretted that he shouldn't have given them matches. I'm a little busy tonight. Don't let Rudolph meet these two guys. Otherwise, give them a few punches and let them feel the iron fist of a level 5 wizard. Continuing to walk forward, Rudolph suddenly saw 6 patrolmen. So many patrolmen are here. I don't know what they are doing. Soon, Rudolph found a shop similar to a bar opposite the patrolman. There were colorful neon lights at the door, and the word Blood Shop was written on the door. At this time, the two people were wrestling in the rain, as if they were fighting for something. The two people soon stopped fighting and bit each other's necks. Rudolph did not stop and looked at the two people from a distance. They should have bought blood in the blood shop, but they didn't know why they were wrestling again. They both bit each other's necks with their fangs. This is the way blood servants or vampires like to solve problems. They bit each other's necks, but they were like the closest people hugging each other. Rudolph suddenly thought of an interesting logical problem. Vampire A bit Vampire B's neck, and Vampire B bit Vampire A's neck. Can their blood form a cycle and become the blood perpetual motion machine of the vampires, so that they don't have to worry about hunger anymore? Rudolph smiled in his cloak. It was him who could think of such an interesting problem. Slowly, the smile disappeared, and Rudolph's eyes drooped more and more. This is the city of Fabreau after he left. After walking a few blocks forward, there were fewer blood servants, and many disabled people appeared on the road. This made Rudolph feel like he was walking in the pirate port beside the floating ice sea, full of the evil god's painful believers. Rudolph stopped in front of a store. There was a glass bottle hanging at the door of the store, and there was a turbid unknown liquid in the glass bottle. There was something soaked in the liquid, and from the outline, it should be half a palm and 2 fingers. Looking at this organ specimen, Rudolph was a little dazed, and he remembered many things on the night of sacrifice. On that night, the priests of the evil god cult helped the Church of Pain to create a huge sacrifice, a sacrifice that enveloped everyone in the Dordo district. The Dordo district, which escaped the blood fog night, failed to escape the night of sacrifice. Under the painful gaze of the evil god, the entire block was full of citizens who were self-harming. The ground was stained with blood. The unfortunate people became the painful believers of the evil god. The blood samples of the more unfortunate people were taken away by the witch hunters and became blood servants. In order not to appear special, Rudolph left the shop and stopped looking at the cut organ specimens. Rudolph should be happy for these painful believers. They live closer to the city center and obviously have a higher status than the blood servants in the suburbs. Haha, it's really a lucky thing. Not long after walking, there were suddenly fewer buildings in front of him. Rudolph saw a small square, and at the end of the square was a temple. The dome shape was undoubtedly a temple. There was a statue on the square. The statue had only a dark outline, and the statue was full of thick iron nails. This was the temple of the evil god's pain. Rudolph remembered where this was. This was the place where the evil god appeared in pain on the night of the sacrifice. Alas, the kingdom of Elba was in civil war, but even the kingdom of Elba did not have a temple. There was only the Sarago Sea between there and the southern continent of the evil god cult, and there was no temple so close. Fabreau City, unexpectedly, has no bottom line in this matter, and built a temple here to commemorate the evil god Pain. It is somewhat redundant to talk about the bottom line with the alchemist. Money has an inexplicable magic that makes the alchemist a slave to money. Bottom line, can it be exchanged for money? In order not to bear the bad reputation, the hypocritical alchemy council and the evil god priest reached an agreement to sacrifice the Dordo district to the evil god Pain. The evil god Pain got believers, and the alchemy council got blood servant miners. They each got what they needed, which was perfect. After glancing at the temple, Rudolph turned around and continued walking. After more than 10 meters, Rudolph saw a man who had lost both legs, crawling towards the temple. He was lying on the ground, and passers-by could easily ignore him, especially when he crawled into a puddle. It was even harder to be found. Rudolph saw several footprints on his back, and the rain was about to wash away the footprints. I wonder if the passers-by who stepped on him were scared. Maybe the rain made his wounds that had been growing for more than a year itch. Many people who have undergone surgery will feel uncomfortable with their wounds when they encounter rainy days within a few years. He wanted to pray to the evil god for a while. If he got a little blessing from the evil god, he might be able to enhance his ability to endure pain. Rudolph stood at the edge of the sidewalk and made way for the believer. The believer was lying on his face on the ground the whole time. The closer he got to the temple, the louder his whimpering became. Even the sound of rain could not cover his groans. Another believer with crutches appeared from the entrance of the alley. The hard iron crutches hit his back, and he kept shouting and cursing in pain. Rudolph was going to commit a crime, so it was not convenient to remind him if he saw it. Only after he had crawled far away did Rudolph return to the sidewalk and continue walking forward. After walking a long way, he was still thinking about the believer who had lost his legs. That believer should have put reflective strips on his clothes so that even at night, even if he was lying on the ground, he could be noticed and avoided being stepped on. If I meet him next time, I'll remind him. Rudolph was like a retrograde. Other believers walked towards the temple, but he turned his back to all the believers and walked towards the rich area, the brown district. Rudolph felt sorry for the believers who passed by strange and self-harming. This was the city of Fabreau after he left. After walking for more than 10 minutes, he saw a bridge in the distance. Across the bridge was the rich area, the brown district. Under the bridge was a branch of the Rhone River. On the bridge were 2 patrol teams. Across the bridge, Rudolph also saw a witch hunter team. The violent institutions in Fabreau strictly prevented the blood servants and believers from entering the rich area to cause trouble. Rudolph's figure slowly sank and disappeared into the ground. When he appeared again, he was already on the other side of the bridge, behind the witch hunter team. No one noticed him. For these patrolmen and witch hunters, a level 5 wizard was a bit beyond their scope, and they could not perceive or fight against it. Rudolph walked slowly into the depths of the rich brown district. The stone slabs here were intact and clean, no longer broken. Walking in the shadows, the street lights in the distance were tall and bright. The flower beds on the side of the road were planted with echinacea and asters that bloomed in autumn. These flower beds were carefully maintained, and each flower was unusually bright. Between the mansions on the side of the road, there were neatly cultivated lawns. This is the Fabreau city in Rudolph's memory. It is so beautiful here. Unfortunately, everything here belongs only to the upper class. Those lowly believers and blood servants are not qualified to enjoy it all. This is the Fabreau city after he left. Abel, I'm here. I don't know if you have thought of me in the past year or so. I often dream of you. Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 428. In the shadow of a thick pillar, a man stood, staring at a mansion in the distance. A light was on in a room of the mansion, which was the residence of Abel, the chairman of the Alchemy Council of Fabreau City. From the window, you can see the bookshelves inside. That room should be the study. Rudolph looked at the watch. It was already 1 o'clock in the middle of the night, and Abel was still working hard for Fabreau City. An old man over 60 years old, who didn't want to retire, didn't want to tease his grandchildren, but worked tirelessly in the study late at night. What kind of dedication is this? Thinking about the scenes seen along the way, Speaker Abel's hard work was really fruitful. A huge amount of wealth was taken away, and under Abel's arrangement, it was sent to the high-rise safe. The light was still on the study window, which was a clear proof of Abel's hard work for Fabreau City. Rudolph had a sarcastic smile on his lips, hoping that Abel could really move him. Abel, it's time to pay back the debt. One after another, the 20 to 30 centimeters of starlight water snakes emerged from the cloak. The moment they left the cloak, the already weak light on the starlight water snakes completely disappeared, turning them into completely transparent phantoms. The Druid relic allowed the starlight water snakes to completely blend into the surrounding environment, very naturally. The sneaking venomous snakes are the most dangerous venomous snakes. The water snakes crawled silently into the distance. The raindrops passed through the water snakes without encountering any resistance and fell into the puddle, stirring up circles of ripples. The ripples in front were quickly disrupted by the ripples of the raindrops behind. All this had nothing to do with the water snakes. Unless there was a level 5 druid or a word spirit who was fortune-telling, no one could detect the sneaking of these water snakes. When Rudolph left, he wanted to hold a 10-day funeral for Claude, because the county judgment office sent people to support Fabreau City, which would take 10 days. However, on the 9th day, Rudolph cautiously terminated the funeral. Now that Rudolph is back, he can continue the funeral. Please wait, Claude. There are 3 witch hunter teams inside and outside the speaker's mansion, a total of 12 people, who are responsible for the speaker's safety all year round. The starlight water snake's response was perfect, and it quickly controlled these witch hunters. Rudolph raised his foot and walked towards the speaker's mansion. There was a puddle on the ground under his feet. Rudolph walked in the puddle without stepping on the water, as if he had no weight. Rudolph didn't want to leave any traces in tonight's action. When he came to the main entrance, there were 2 witch hunters standing on each side. They still maintained their standing appearance, but the joints of their bodies were wrapped with water snakes. It was the water snakes that fixed their joints and prevented them from falling. And there was cyanotic liquid flowing from the corners of their mouths, their eyes rolled back, and they only exhaled, not inhaled. The 4 witch hunters died like sculptures. With a wave of his hand, the heavy iron door slowly opened under the effect of the wind magic of the wind-raising magic. The earth magic shock absorption spell made the bolt of the gate silent. Entering the courtyard, in the shadows in the corner of the courtyard, there were also 4 witch hunters who seemed to be standing, but were actually dead. Standing in Abel's courtyard, Rudolph looked up at the lighted study window on the 2nd floor. The strongest person in this courtyard is Abel. Rudolph doesn't know whether he is a level 4 or level 5 alchemist now. But it doesn't matter. Whether it is level 4 or level 5, it is not Rudolph's opponent. It's time to confront the Alchemy Council and let them increase their investment. 2 or 3 witch hunter teams are not enough to save Abel's life. Rudolph walked towards the entrance, and the luxurious copper-clad wooden door slowly opened. After entering the room, the whole room was covered with wool carpets. Sheep are the favorite livestock of the northern continent. They are obedient, docile, and full of treasures. Meat can be eaten, milk can be drunk, skin can be worn, and wool can be used to weave clothes. Moreover, they eat the cheapest grass. Everyone likes to be a shepherd and harvest the fur and flesh of others. The various advantages of sheep make people like to lay sheepskin carpets at home. Carpets are very friendly to Rudolph, and his movements are less likely to make noise. The servants of the speaker have all fallen into a coma, but the difference is that Rudolph did not kill them. The witch hunters are part of the Alchemy Council, but these servants are not. At about 1 o'clock in the middle of the night, the whole 1st floor was dark, and Rudolph was like a black ghost, slowly walking towards the stairs. The three-stage folding staircase has a 2-meter square stairwell. There is a beautiful crystal chandelier at the top of the stairwell. Now, a witch hunter is hanging on the chandelier, and the starlight water snake is like a transparent rope, hanging the witch hunter. This is the witch hunter who guarded the speaker inside the mansion, and he also died silently. Coming to the short corridor on the second floor, far and near, 3 witch hunters were leaning against the wall, motionless. Rudolph stood outside the study, staring down at the light in the door. He slowly raised his head and took off his cloak. The starlight water snake tied up the joints of a witch hunter, controlled the body of the witch hunter, and walked towards the study. The witch hunter pushed open the door of the study, allowing Rudolph to see the scene inside. Abel, who was originally working on documents, looked up in astonishment. Who rashly opened the door of his study so late at night? Was there an emergency in the parliament? Something about the Ruhr mining area? Or was the evil god cult going to build a new temple? However, the next moment, Abel suddenly clenched his pen. The copper pen tip pierced through several layers of paper and stabbed fiercely on the table. The wood grain on the tabletop hides an alchemical shielding array. A level 6 alchemical shielding array. Abel values Rudolph more than Rudolph imagined, and the name of the furnace has always been a dark cloud over Abel's head. This is the alchemical shielding array that Abel deliberately asked the level 6 alchemist Obed, the chairman of Vichy County, to draw for him after he got the information from the trial bureau and learned about some of the furnace's deeds in the southern continent. The wrinkles and fat on Abel's old face jumped slightly because of the trembling at this moment. The body of the witch hunter fell forward, and he saw the man behind the witch hunter. The furnace. That friend of Claude, the furnace that almost destroyed the Ruhr mining area for Claude. For a moment, the whole room was lit up with dazzling light. At this moment, Abel believed more in the array made by a higher-level alchemist. The sewing thread of the carpet is made of alchemical copper wire, the outline of the characters in the mural on the wall is made of alchemical copper wire, and the painted ceiling is also made of alchemical copper wire. The alchemical copper wire was filled with alchemical power, and the magnetic field it generated instantly shielded all radiation. Abel was confident that the star power would not work at all. Facing the instantly activated alchemical shielding array, Rudolph smiled. The moment they looked at each other, Abel had already lost. Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 429. Abel stared at the furnace, waiting for the next move, but saw some of the hair on the furnace's head stand up and turn into 9 golden cobras. There were 9 cobras made of golden phoenix fire, which was the flame spirit of the ability of the level 5 silver snake Abigail. Rudolph's pupils turned into golden snake pupils, the same as the pupils of the flame spirit cobra. The moment Abel saw Rudolph's golden vertical pupils, he was stunned. The alchemical power on the pen in his hand suddenly disappeared. The alchemical copper wire that was just hot and seemed to melt quickly dimmed, the energy dissipated, and the shielding ability was instantly reduced. Before Abel lost consciousness, the last thought was, how could there be a level 5 silver snake witch in the furnace? Every kingdom's trial office will make a list with the information of each silver snake. The most treacherous ability comes from the most difficult way to be promoted. Word Spirit and Silver Snake can be said to be the most difficult to be promoted among all apostles. If a level 5 Silver Snake appears in the Carolingian Kingdom, the Supreme Judgment Department of the Royal Capital will initiate an emergency procedure and use all its strength to control the Silver Snake. How could such a powerful apostle of the Silver Snake, with such a difficult ability, be killed by the furnace? People who are charmed by low-level silver snakes will not die, and death will help the charmed people get rid of control. But the level 5 silver snake is different. The level 5 silver snake has the ability to kill. The level 5 silver snake, titled Petrified Silver Snake, has the petrification ability of the legendary 9-headed snake Hydra. Anyone who looks at the level 5 petrified silver snake will be petrified instantly. Rudolph thought about this day for a long time. He found that other abilities were not safe. Abel might have prepared some means of escape. A speaker can mobilize a lot of resources. The level 6 alchemical shielding array in front of him is proof. If Rudolph rashly approaches Abel, he may be trapped by Abel. He won't die, but a sneak attack will turn into a strong attack. If he attracts Colonel Gaten's silver flame and is saturated with thermite rockets, it will be difficult for Rudolph to force it down. If Abel survives this time, it will be even more difficult to kill him next time. Only the ability of the silver snake can be foolproof. Only the ability of the petrified silver snake can ensure that all of Abel's backup plans are useless. There are faint explosions in the air, crackling, like cracks slowly appearing on a piece of glass. In fact, this is Abel's body petrifying little by little, some petrifying slowly, some petrifying quickly, and the stones at the joints will collide with faint crackling sounds. Abel's original normal skin color quickly turned into a gray marble color. This is the first time Rudolph used the silver snake's petrification technique. In the star map, Abigail has long been promoted to a level 5 apostle like Larry and Vanya. Above Abigail's head, 9 silver cobras emerged from her original red hair, standing on top of her head and swaying slowly. These silver cobras are the core ability of the level 5 silver snake. Anyone who looks at the silver snake will be petrified instantly. Rudolph tried to lift his foot and walked into the study full of alchemical arrays. When his left foot stepped on the carpet in the room, he found that everything was normal and nothing happened. Without any surprise, Abel was petrified directly. Rudolph came to Abel and looked at Abel's appearance. Death solidified on Abel's face. His expression before death was very calm and confident. He believed that the level 6 alchemical array was enough to deal with everything. Before petrification, Abel didn't even have time to change his expression. Fortunately, his eyes accurately recorded his last mood. The eyes of the stone statue are very vivid. The muscles around the eyes are tightening. There is fear in the depths of the eyes. It is the fear of facing danger and foreseeing death. The silver snake's direct petrification. The silver snake has a certain characteristic like the evil god. You can't look directly at the evil god, nor can you look directly at the level 5 petrified silver snake. But in battle, people always use their eyes to capture the enemy's movements at the first time, which makes the silver snake very scary when attacking others, and it is almost difficult to guard against. This stone statue is lifelike, and every hair on the white marble is clearly visible. Rudolph is very disgusted. Who are you? Do you deserve a statue? With a wave of his hand, Rudolph slapped the stone statue. Hiss, so hard. If Rudolph was a knight, he would definitely be able to break this stone statue with one punch. Vanya drilled out of Rudolph's palm and sent a blood-cut line to the neck of the stone statue. The red line flashed and cut towards the neck of the stone statue. The level 5 blood-cut line was too sharp, leaving a thin line on the neck of the stone statue. Rudolph was unsure, and reached out to push the head of the stone statue. The head of the stone statue moved, and he was sure that the head and body of the stone statue were separated. The blood tangent also cut out some stone powder and stone chips. After the stone powder lost its petrifying power, it turned back into blood, leaving a handful of blood mist in the air. Vanya's blood tangent swept back and forth in the air twice, absorbing all the blood mist to avoid leaving any traces. What a wonderful ability, don't you think, Vanya? It's a pity that Vanya didn't have his own consciousness and couldn't share his joy with Rudolph at this time. A blue black hole vortex appeared in Rudolph's hand, and a starlight water snake as thick as a bucket emerged from the vortex. The starlight water snake opened its mouth and swallowed the head of the stone statue in one bite. The exposed neck of the stone statue was as smooth as polished fine marble. The second bite swallowed Abel whole into the stomach, that is, into the annihilation black hole. At this point, Abel completely disappeared. Rudolf didn't want anyone to find him through Abel's body, especially to expose Rudolf's level 5 petrified silver snake ability. Looking around, Rudolf found that Abel's relic was the pen on his desk. Why did this pen look so familiar? Rudolf suddenly remembered that this was the magic tool he made, the endless pen, which could store endless ink. It turned out that this pen was auctioned off at a high price and was given to Abel. With the blessing of the hive relic and the cancer witch language, a pen passed down for 3 generations would not be able to use up the ink inside. Unfortunately, the pen sent Abel away first. Level 5 Relic Magnetic Control Pen. Abel and Claude are both magnetic control alchemists. Rudolf had obtained the Vila secret before, and one of the secondary relics of the Vila secret was the alchemist relic. Rudolf planned to keep this relic. The difficulty of Argo is very high, and it is necessary to complete the secret formulas of the 4 constellations of Vila, Carina, Puppis, and Pixis. The road of the Argo wizard is very long, so work hard in that direction first, just in case you succeed. This relic disappeared in Rudolf's hands. In his mind, a meteor streaked across the night sky of the star map and hit the Gemini Sigma star, and 3 suspended stars fell from the Gemini Sigma star. /U003 Secret Formula of the Southern Sky Sculptor. Star Map Sculptor Hexagram. Main Relic Level 5 Alchemist Relic. Secondary Relic Level 5 Werewolf Relic, Level 5 Priest Relic. Ritual Location Sculptor Direct Area, Rakai Studio. /U003E. Sculptor means sculptor, and the ability of this constellation wizard may be related to carving. The priest relic did not say which priest relic it was, it should be any level 5 priest relic. After putting on the hood, Rudolf turned around and prepared to leave here. When he came to the door and was about to leave the study, Rudolf suddenly turned his head and looked at the master bedroom. The door of the master bedroom opened, and an old woman stood at the door. Ms. Abel had a light sleep, and the faint sound of the alchemy shielding array just activated woke her up. She looked past Rudolf and looked at the study behind Rudolf. The light was on in the study, but Abel disappeared, and the documents were spread out on the table. Ms. Abel's expression did not change much. She emphasized, "You disturbed my sleep." "Sorry, ma'am." "Where is Abel?" Speaker Abel had something urgent and left here. Rudolf walked towards the stairwell step by step. Ms. Abel asked in confusion, "Won't you kill me?" Rudolf turned his head in astonishment and looked at this lady. What is the strength of this lady, and how did she find out? Decades of husband and wife may make this lady have a different premonition of certain things than others. "Why should I kill you? I will die sooner or later because of what Abel did." "Oh, you worry too much. I saw you at Claude's funeral, so you don't have to die. I will keep it a secret for you." "Thank you very much." Ms. Abel closed the door, really pretending that nothing happened here. A 10-meter-long, bucket-thick starlight water snake appeared and swallowed several witch hunters into its stomach. Be hygienic and polite, and help the owner clean up when leaving no trace. The more important reason is that Rudolf does not want to leave the information about the poison to the trial office. The witch hunters outside are the same, and they all entered the belly of the starlight water snake. After leaving Abel's mansion, Rudolf found that it was no longer raining outside. Returning to Fabreau City as quickly as possible and killing Abel before everyone is ready is the first step of Rudolf's plan. Next, not only will Abel be killed, but Abel's career will also be ruined, making his life a joke. Oh, and there was also Obed, the deputy speaker of the Vichy County Council at the time. He was also a participant in Claude's death. Even the night of the sacrifice he supervised in Fabreau City could not be spared. Rudolf looked up at the dark clouds in the night sky and sighed. Coming to this strange world, he should have tasted delicious food, should have lingered in the scenery, should have fallen in love with every girl he met, and experienced this wonderful strange world. However, he ended up becoming a villain. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 430. The rain stopped. The autumn rain that had been falling for several days in February finally stopped. There was no sound of rain outside the window, but there was a more annoying shouting noise. Mrs. Leslie, the mother of Baron Jennifer of Gassai Town, was awakened by a burst of running and shouting. She was very confused. This was the Rondo district, a rich area where parliamentarians, nobles, and big businessmen lived. They were either rich or noble. Was there no one to take care of the noise outside? She went to open the window first, and the scene outside the window surprised her. For some reason, the streets of the Rondo district were full of patrolmen this morning, as if all the patrolmen in the entire Fabro city were concentrated in the Rondo district. Among the patrolmen, there were also teams of witch hunters in robes. There were even 2 airships not far away, floating in the air. Judging from the location of the airship, it seemed to be the residence of the speaker or the deputy speaker. What happened in the Brown district? As long as there was no accident with the noble knight, the speaker or the deputy speaker had nothing to do with Mrs. Leslie. She opened the window to let fresh air into the bedroom. She hadn't opened the window for several days. After the rain stopped, the air smelled fresh. Mrs. Leslie felt happy. After a simple wash and no makeup, Mrs. Leslie went downstairs to the restaurant. After drinking a glass of water, Mrs. Leslie did not wait for her daughter. "Where is the Baron?" A maid replied, "The Baron left the mansion at 3 o'clock in the middle of the night last night. It seems that someone from the Judgment Bureau came to inform him of some big news." "What big news is it that requires the Baron to leave her mansion in the middle of the night?" "Madam, we don't know the specific news. The content is confidential. We only heard that the whole city is under martial law and in a state of emergency. The Baron's attendant just came back and left a message. The Baron asked you not to walk around recently, especially in the next 2 days." Mrs. Leslie did not comment. After dinner, she left the mansion. Martial law. What does this have to do with her? When people get old, they become rebellious and don't want to listen to their children, just as children don't want to listen to their parents. In this year and a half, Mrs. Leslie suddenly felt that she was old. One of the signs of aging is losing interest in the opposite sex. After Claude's death, Mrs. Leslie found that she was not interested in men, she was only interested in Claude. It was impossible not to go out. Every month, Mrs. Leslie would go to the South City Cemetery, where Claude was buried. The carriage left the mansion and headed south of the city. Even in the carriage, Mrs. Leslie would put down the black veil on her hat to cover her face. Baron Jennifer once wanted to complain after having dinner with his mother that his mother should also go to his father's grave to take a look, not just to sweep the grave for Claude. However, seeing Mrs. Leslie's increasingly pale appearance, Jennifer finally gave up the idea. After Claude's death, Mrs. Leslie quickly withered, as if all the red had gone away from her life. She no longer blushed, and liked black more and more. Life became monotonous and boring. Jennifer's father was only the husband of Lady Leslie. Claude, whom Lady Leslie loved when she was a girl, was the love of her life. Jennifer could not intervene in the love and hatred of the previous generation. Let her mother do whatever she wanted. Lady Leslie's journey today was not smooth. She passed several intersections and the carriage stopped many times. The coachman had to explain to the patrolman repeatedly that this was the carriage of the Baron's mother and asked the patrolman to let it go. The patrolman shouted and said they were looking for suspicious people. The coachman had to emphasize that suspicious people could not appear in the carriage of the Baron's mother. When leaving the Brown district, there was an inspection area of dozens of meters. This is the junction of the Brown district and the Dordo district. The guards have changed from patrolmen to witch hunters. No matter how the coachman explained this time, the witch hunters were unwilling to let it go. The order of the Alchemy Council. All people and cars must be inspected. In the carriage, Lady Lazily listened to the noise outside and felt irritated. This affected her going to the cemetery too much. There was a witch hunter who wanted to open the curtain of the carriage. The witch hunter had an argument with the coachman, and the witch hunter's attitude was very firm. The coachman didn't dare to let the witch hunter enter the carriage, which was simply a challenge to the Baron's dignity. Just as the coachman and the witch hunter were arguing, a team of cavalry came quickly. To be able to bring cavalry in the rich area of Rondo, at least a noble above the Baron. The people who came were Baron Jennifer and her knight. Baron Jennifer had a cold face and took action without saying a word. Her whip hit the shoulder of the witch hunter closest to the carriage. "Get out! How dare you stop my mother's carriage?" Jennifer didn't sleep in the second half of the night and had to stay in the speaker's mansion to pretend. She guessed that her mother would go to commemorate Claude without fail, so she followed to see if she was worried. Sure enough, she saw the witch hunter stopped her mother. The Baron took action, but the witch hunter didn't dare to resist and could only glare at Baron Jennifer. The witch hunter captain had to explain, "Baron, you also know that a highly confidential incident has occurred. No carriage can be allowed to leave without a search, especially the carriage leaving the Brown district." "What is confidential? Does the disappearance of the speaker need to be kept secret? Why don't you send someone to the Dordo district or the Bayer district to ask? I think everyone in the city knows about it. Is there any point in keeping it secret now?" Jennifer's contemptuous tone made the witch hunter captain angry, but he didn't dare to show it. For more than a year, the relationship between the Alchemy Council of Fabreau City and the nobles was very bad. Last year, the furnace caused a big commotion, targeting the Alchemy Council and killing people indiscriminately. Even the headquarters building of Thor Trading Company was blown up by the furnace. The mining area and even the Werewolf transport team along the way were severely hit by the furnace, which caused Thor Trading Company to suffer unbearable losses. In order to make up for the losses in a short time, Thor Trading Company chose to grab production capacity and market share from Rondo Trading Company. Thor Trading Company, which belongs to the Alchemy Council, has been using various means to erode the share of Rondo Trading Company. Originally, the share of Rondo Trading Company was very small, about 1/3 of Thor Trading Company, but the greedy Thor Trading Company was unwilling to give even this 1/3. Viscount Savin and other nobles were dissatisfied, and even Earl Baron issued a letter of reprimand, thinking that Viscount Savin was not doing a good job. Earl Baron has a lot of shares in Rondo Trading Company. Jennifer didn't even have to do it herself. There were many people who spread the news that the speaker had died again. Why use again? Because a year and a half ago, the funerals of the speaker and deputy speaker of Fabreau City were linked, one died after another. What does Abel's disappearance or death have to do with the nobles? Are you going to pin the crime of murder on the nobles? Jennifer looked down at the witch hunter captain. Are you hiding some evidence and planning to put it in my mother's carriage? The witch hunter captain had cold sweat on his head. He really didn't think so, but thinking about it again, the Baron was still thoughtful. If he really did this, he could indeed pin the crime on the nobles. "Get lost," Baron Jennifer shouted. "If you don't want to provoke a war between the nobles and the Alchemy Council now, then be honest and don't make trouble at this time." But, the witch hunter captain was still unwilling to give up. Speaker Abel is a level 5 alchemist. His disappearance proves that there are powerful criminals in Fabreau City. Madame will be in danger if she leaves the Brown district like this. Please go back with Madame. Danger, Jennifer did not comment. I will escort my mother. Your worries are unnecessary. Although there was no evidence, Jennifer felt that other people in Fabreau City were trembling, but she and her mother were the safest people. If her guess was correct. In the end, the witch hunter had to let go and watched the Baron escort her mother away with the knight. After walking away, Mrs. Lacely said across the carriage, "Jennifer, if you have something to do, go ahead and do it. I'll go to the cemetery by myself." "It's okay. I'll go with you. Abel may really be dead, and Fabreau City may fall into chaos." Mrs. Lacely didn't pay any attention to the possible dangers. She quickly emphasized, "Abel is dead? Then today is a good time to tell Claude this good news." Jennifer couldn't help but sigh. She didn't know what charm Claude had, and why her mother fell so deeply. "Jennifer, you go back first. You must be very busy. I can go to the South City Cemetery by myself, or you can let the knight follow me." "It's okay. The witch hunters have taken over Speaker Abel's mansion a long time ago. I have nothing to do if I go there." Jennifer added in her heart that it would be better to determine something more important. At the speaker's mansion, the murderer solved the 3 witch hunter teams on the periphery very neatly, a total of 12 witch hunters, without even leaving a corpse, and there was no sign of any fight. This proves that the murderer is very strong. The servants in the mansion didn't hear any sound, and Mrs. Abel said she knew nothing. As for Speaker Abel himself, he should have been in the study when the accident happened. There were no signs of fighting in the study, all the furniture was in place, and even the speaker's documents remained open. The only information is that the speaker activated the level 6 alchemical shielding array. There were slight burn marks on the carpet, proving that the activation time of the level 6 alchemical shielding array was very short, perhaps less than 1 second. In other words, the murderer may be a wizard, or he may be holding a very powerful magic weapon. As a level 5 alchemist, Speaker Abel was still protected by the level 6 shielding array, but he was still killed without resistance. According to the witch hunter's judgment, the speaker was killed without even standing up, and the chair was not moved. I don't know who targeted the speaker, so cruel and so powerful. All the servants are alive, Mrs. Abel didn't even wake up, and the speaker and the witch hunter disappeared without a trace. The level 2 word spirit of the Alchemy Council of Fabreau City did not find anything useful at the scene. After the accident, Viscount Savin showed Jennifer a piece of intelligence, which was foreign intelligence collected by the Royal Intelligence Department. Among the intelligence about the southern continent, one was deliberately marked by Viscount Savin for Jennifer. The evil god cult wanted the southern Phoenix Wizard Furnace. Staring at the speaker and vice speaker of the Alchemy Council to kill, this is the origin of the title Furnace. Among those who have a grudge against Abel, Furnace is undoubtedly the most motivated one. This is also Viscount Savin's guess. He thinks the murderer is most likely Furnace Rudolph. But if Rudolph is back, why doesn't he contact her? Today, she accompanied her mother to the South City Cemetery to give Rudolph a chance to contact her. Along the way, Jennifer deliberately slowed down. What disappointed her was that the whole journey was very normal and there was no clue. She was still looking forward to a newsboy handing her a note or something. Arriving at Nanchinge Cemetery, Mrs. Lacely got out of the car and walked towards the cemetery with the support of the maid. Jennifer followed behind, observing her surroundings. The gravekeepers in Nanchinge are very familiar with this scene. They can see the Baron's mother coming to the cemetery to visit her friends every month. Mrs. Leslie took off her hat with black gauze, walked slowly in the cemetery, and finally came to Claude's grave. Standing in front of the cemetery, her face was very expressive. It started out as a sullen smile, then turned into a wry smile, and finally turned into an interested smile. A white rose is placed in front of Claude's tombstone. Which woman is this here again? Mrs. Lacely picked up the white rose, looked at it and found that it was very fresh, and then put it down again. Mrs. Betsy? Probably not. She is very timid. White roses are contraband in Fabreau City and are not allowed to be bought or sold. After Claude's death, his friend, the wizard, once took revenge on the city council like crazy. At that time, every time the wizard committed a crime, he would drop a white rose at the scene. Later, the Alchemy Council specially formulated a rule and white roses became contraband. No one dared to buy a white rose. If caught by the patrol, they would be considered an accomplice of the wizard. Mrs. Vanny? Probably not. Mrs. Vanny's husband just died. She is so happy recently that she won't remember Claude. Mrs. Leslie, who had no clue, finally thought that this was just a woman who suddenly thought of Claude on the anniversary. Throwing away the flowers from others, Mrs. Leslie put down her own white rose. Jennifer stared at the white rose that was thrown by the roadside and thought about something. Her intuition told her that maybe Rudolph was really back. But why didn't Rudolph contact her first? Back in the Browns, Jennifer arrives at Abel's mansion. The mansion was surrounded by security tapes on 3 floors inside and 3 outside. Every blade of grass was turned over, every floor tile was looked at with a magnifying glass, and the most experienced witch hunters were constantly busy. Jennifer came behind Viscount Saywan and whispered, "Master Viscount, I did not find Rudolph." Viscount Saywan looked sad and pretended to be very similar. He didn't even change his expression and whispered, "Just wait a little longer. It would be great if the furnace comes back. The furnace will be able to break the situation and leave the Alchemy Council to take care of itself. Lord Viscount, Rudolph should contact me when he returns." Viscount Saywan said, "There is also a possibility that Abel is not the final target of the furnace. He may want to do something else, so he cannot expose himself for the time being." Jennifer looked forward along the line of sight of Viscount Saywan and saw Colonel Guyton and Deputy Speaker Jem. Deputy Speaker Jem is now the biggest headache. He is now the head of the city council, but Colonel Guyton is the backbone of the council. Killing a chancellor was so bad that perhaps Rudolph sensed some danger and had to hide. Perhaps just as Viscount Saywan said, Rudolph also wanted to do something more terrifying. Weird Star Witch. Author, White Silver Black Iron. Chapter 431. It is said that holding a ladder and wearing a worksuit, you can freely enter and exit most places. No one will stop you, and everyone will think you are a repairman. At noon on the second day after Speaker Abel's unfortunate death, Rudolph, wearing a blue-gray worksuit, a tool bag hanging on his waist, a ladder horizontally, and a safety helmet, walked towards the Parliament's meeting hall. The Parliament will hold a very important meeting this afternoon, and the Parliament staff are preparing for the meeting nervously. The Speaker disappeared at midnight yesterday. After a panicked morning, the Alchemy Parliament finally determined that the Speaker could not be found. Around the disappearance of the Speaker, the Parliament is preparing to hold an emergency meeting in the afternoon. People hurried past, and no one noticed that an ordinary repairman entered the side door of the equipment room of the meeting hall. Of course, divination is indispensable here. Entering the Parliament at this time is just the shift change time for witch hunters, and no one will stop him. Rudolph has been to the City Hall before. The last time he came was to receive the title of Outstanding Citizen of Fabreau City. In fact, Rudolph liked the title of Outstanding Citizen very much, but unfortunately the Alchemy Council later took it back. This is too much. How can you take back something you have given away? It's a lack of quality. The council hall is a long hall building, with 2 rostrums on the rostrum in front. There is only one rostrum on the higher level, which belongs to the late Speaker Abel. There are 2 rostrums on the second level, one of which belongs to the current Deputy Speaker Jem. Jem was the former director of the Judgment Bureau, and later promoted to Deputy Speaker. There is only one Deputy Speaker in Fabreau City, and the position of the other Deputy Speaker is vacant. It turned out that Old Thor was the Deputy Speaker, but unfortunately Old Thor died. Thor's daughter, Ivy, became the general manager of Thor Trading Company. The second Deputy Speaker's position is reserved for Ivy. As long as Ivy is promoted to a level 4 alchemist, she can become the deputy speaker. This also proves the importance of Thor Trading Company, which is the main body and operator of the Alchemy Council's mining of the Ruhr mining area. Opposite the rostrum is the rising pool of members. Fabro City has more than 50 councillors, who control all profitable companies in Fabro City, including trading companies, construction companies, hospitals, colleges, blood centers, etc. They are the real masters of the entire Fabro City. The pool seat is as high as a 2-story building when it is raised to the highest point. There is also a high space above the pool seat, which is about the height of a 3-story building. Rudolph's identity is certainly not worthy of appearing in the council hall. He is a repairman and honestly entered the equipment room and then went up to the 3rd floor in the equipment room. There are still many equipment on the ceiling of the council hall, such as fire hoses and lines. Staying on the 3rd floor of the equipment room, Rudolph will continue to confront the Alchemy Council here to let them understand the sinisterness of human hearts and the complexity of society. Waiting bored, Rudolph went to the tea room to get a cup of coffee while no one was there and returned to the equipment room. If no one sees it, it is not considered stealing, but taking it. At 2:30 in the afternoon, the councillors entered the council hall one after another. There will be an important meeting of the Alchemy Council of Fabro City at 3 o'clock. Soon, the tall hall was full of people. The members sat in their seats in panic, constantly arguing and shouting to hide their fear. How could they not be afraid? The speaker died again. Every disaster in Fabro City started with the death of the speaker. Which parliament could bear this? However, their quarrels did not have any effect. The one who died was a level 5 alchemist. Many of these low-level alchemist members were agents of big men. If the big men were dead, what could they do? The side door of the council hall opened, and Deputy Speaker Jem stood at the door, staring at the rostrum opposite him for a few seconds. That tangled look, as if he was going to the guillotine instead of the rostrum. All the members of the parliament instantly quieted down and stared at Deputy Speaker Jem in the side door. It was not until the Deputy Speaker adjusted his mood and walked towards the rostrum that the members of the parliament fell into an argument again. They looked at the Deputy Speaker from time to time. Is the situation so critical that the Deputy Speaker can't even manage his expression? Speaker Abel is now missing, and he can only be declared dead after 2 years of disappearance. Therefore, Speaker Abel will remain missing for a long time, and 2 years later, the Parliament will announce that he has gloriously dedicated himself to the cause of alchemists. The night before yesterday, the witch hunter team on duty rushed to the Speaker's mansion, but found that the mansion was terribly quiet inside and outside. The witch hunters immediately began to investigate, but found that the Speaker and the 3 witch hunter teams disappeared without a trace. There is a saying in Vichy County that the most dangerous profession in Vichy County is not the witch hunter who faces wizards directly, but the Speaker of the Alchemy Council of Fabro City. Deputy Speaker Jem prepared all the cash yesterday and was going to the county city to do some activities so that he could become a member of the county council as soon as possible and not stay in this dangerous Fabro City. After sitting on the podium, Deputy Speaker Jem's face was livid, and he stared at the report in front of him in silence. But what can be seen? No one knows where the speaker went. In the tea room, after the witch hunters checked, the female intern brought a cup of coffee on a plate to the podium. The coffee was placed on the left-hand side of Deputy Speaker Jem, with steam rising from it. On the 3rd floor of the equipment room, Rudolph drank the last sip of coffee and looked at Deputy Speaker Jem below through the small observation window. In the seats to the side of the pool, there were attendees without voting rights, and the most senior one among them was Viscount Savin in the front. Viscount Savin also had a report in his hand, a report on the missing speaker issued by the tribunal. If it was in the past, the tribunal would not have shared such an important document with him. Now he didn't want to see it, but the tribunal had to give it to him. There was no way. Viscount Savin was a level 3 knight, a level 3 knight who could be regarded as a level 4 apostle. Many members sometimes looked at Deputy Speaker Jem on the rostrum, and sometimes looked at Viscount Savin. In the equipment room on the third floor, Rudolph also glanced at Viscount Savin. The big man who was thought to be unattainable at the beginning, the Honorable Viscount, was at the same level as Viscount Paulus, who died quietly after framing Rudolph, a level 3 knight, but now it seems that he is just that. Rudolph suddenly felt that in the year and a half since he left, Fabreau City has not changed much. Most people are ordinary people, and it is impossible for them to have such a fast progress like Rudolph. Viscount Savin turned around and said to one of the 3 barons behind him, "Baron Jennifer, are there any traces of toxins at the scene?" Jennifer knew what Viscount Savin meant, and she replied, "There is no evidence. Every inch of the floor of the speaker's mansion has been searched, and there is no venom on the ground. Scorpio wizards can poison and detoxify. The toxin of Scorpio wizards is star power. As long as the star power is eliminated, the toxin will disappear. We can only see whether it is poisoned by the symptoms of the corpse, but there is no corpse at the scene. It's no wonder that Viscount Savin has been suspicious, from yesterday to now. The previous speakers and vice speakers all died at the hands of the Scorpio wizard Rudolph the Furnace. No matter how careful Rudolph is, as long as the speaker of Fabreau City dies, he will be the first suspect. In the more than a year since the Furnace left, the Furnace has been a suspect in all major events encountered by the Alchemy Council, and this time is no exception. Rudolph was very distressed yesterday. Why do these people suspect others randomly? They want to put the crime on Rudolph without any evidence. They guessed it right. Jennifer stared at Deputy Speaker Jem on the stage, and she hoped that Rudolph would come back. Deputy Speaker Jem has been focusing part of his attention on the noble seats. He noticed Jennifer's sight and turned to look at Jennifer. Jennifer did not give in at all and looked at Deputy Speaker Jem. Deputy Speaker Jem suddenly felt guilty and had no confidence. He shifted his sight. He could not intensify the conflict with the nobles at this time. In the past year, the Rondo Trading Company, which belongs to the nobles, and the Thor Trading Company, which belongs to the alchemists, have been competing fiercely, and both sides have not given in. Thor Trading Company has a very good market. No matter how much minerals are produced, the Elba Alchemy Council is willing to take them all. On the contrary, Rondo Trading Company is not very smooth in sales. The nobles wanted to sell the minerals to the Elba royal nobles, but the upper house of the royal capital's Supreme Alchemy Council enacted a bill to prohibit any trade with the Elba royal nobles and announced sanctions against the Elba royal family. The sales of Rondo Trading Company encountered problems, which made Viscount Savin and the nobles behind him very dissatisfied. Now that Speaker Abel is dead, Jem doesn't want to intensify the conflict. Even Viscount Savin noticed that Vice Speaker Jem was dodging. He turned around and said to the other barons, "Jem, this idiot, what ability does he have? Can he handle the current situation? He doesn't have this ability." The barons only laughed slightly, and the dozen knights behind them had already laughed. For a while, the direction of the nobles in attendance attracted the attention of other members. They didn't need evidence to know that the nobles were mocking the parliament again, just like when Speaker Quint died more than a year ago, the nobles also mocked the parliament on various occasions. The members glared at the direction of the nobles, but the nobles were not afraid. The hawks among the nobles had long ago encouraged the noble knights around them. Since the Elba royal family could counterattack the Alchemy Council, why couldn't the Carolingian royal family? To a certain extent, knights are not only nobles, but also professional soldiers. Only in war can they be promoted in large numbers. Long-term peace will only make the overall strength of knights worse and worse. Deputy Speaker Jem on the rostrum said, "Quiet." Everyone looked at Deputy Speaker Jem. Jem was a little surprised. He thought that the council hall would be noisy for a long time. He just shouted slightly and everyone quieted down. The members of the parliament had long been paying attention to the rostrum. Many people were curious about where the parliament would go after the death of Speaker Abel. The Judgment Office has sent a messenger to report the news here to the Vichy County Council. The parliament will immediately send support forces to deal with the disappearance of the speaker. The congressmen looked at each other, and it seemed that they could only wait like this awkwardly. The murderer who murdered Speaker Abel might be a termite who couldn't stand the prosperity of Fabreau City. Jem didn't look at the nobles, but everyone knew that the so-called termites were the noble knights. It might be an assassin sent by the Elbe royal family. The name of Fabreau City is getting more and more famous now. As the largest mining city in Vichy County, it has undertaken a very heavy support mission to support the Elbe Alchemy Council. It might also be the dark cloud of Fabreau City, a melting pot of vicious criminals. Deputy Speaker Jem was reluctant to mention this name. He now regretted becoming the Deputy Speaker. Why did he go to such great lengths to become the Deputy Speaker? This morning, his wife kept crying, because his wife understood that the worst result was that the furnace really came back. According to the practice of the furnace staring at the speaker to kill, the next victim would most likely be Deputy Speaker Jem. His wife said that she was not as strong as Mrs. Abel. After Speaker Abel died, the speaker's wife did not shed a tear, but just frowned and looked at the people coming and going. Jem continued. In order to ensure our safety, from today on, Colonel Guyton of the 56th Regiment of the Constitutional Army will be stationed in Fabreau City. Before the witch hunters of the County Council arrive, he will be responsible for the safety of Fabreau City. Colonel Guyton is at Speaker Abel's house, handling the speaker's funeral. Everyone should not panic. Speaker Abel and Colonel Guyton have a good personal relationship, so he did not attend the meeting of the parliament. A baron even quietly asked the Viscount, "Sir, it's really not us who did it. What are you thinking? We don't need to break up with the Alchemy Council yet. It's not that easy to counterattack the Alchemy Council. The Elbe royal family is so strong, and now it has become a tense and protracted war, let alone us." Deputy Speaker Jem continued, "The garrison of the 56th Regiment of the Constitutional Army will be changed from the military camp in the suburbs to the Parliament, and this place will be military trusteeship. Colonel Guyton's silver flame is very powerful. Even the level 5 vampires and level 5 werewolves are not the opponents of the silver flame. The dignity of the Alchemy Council cannot be desecrated. We will use the most violent revenge to let the enemy understand the power of the Alchemy Council." The Deputy Speaker's impassioned speech and the record of the silver flame gave the parliamentarians confidence. It sounded like the truth, and Rudolph was a little scared. Think about the level 5 vampire Revno who died at the hands of the silver flame. Even with the sonic boom flash, he couldn't escape the pursuit of the rocket. Think about the werewolf corpses all over the mountains. No matter how many enemies there are, they are no match for the silver flame. Colonel Guyton also said that if necessary, he would ask the military for support. The dignity of the Alchemy Council of Fabreau City will end with sending the enemy to the stake. The truth is in the hands of the alchemist. For a moment, all the members clapped their hands and shouted. The truth belongs to the alchemist. The truth is in the hands of the alchemist. Deputy Speaker Jem looked at the members in the council hall who had regained their morale with satisfaction. He picked up the coffee, ready to refresh himself, and then arranged the next emergency plan. There were 3 rows of lamps on the ceiling of the rostrum. At this time, a translucent starlight watercolor stretched out from a horizontal bar. This horizontal bar was originally used to hang this row of chandeliers. A drop of venom fell from the fangs and hit the coffee accurately. Amid the cheers of the parliamentarians, Deputy Speaker Jem coughed slightly, fell forward, and fell heavily on the chairman's table, spilling coffee all over the table. The council hall fell into silence, and at this moment, time seemed to slow down. 8 witch hunters rushed out of the side door and rushed to the rostrum. In the open side door, Two witch hunters grabbed the female intern who was delivering coffee and tied her hands behind her back. The female intern burst into tears and looked at her father, a parliamentarian. Some of the parliamentarians were dazed in their seats, while others held their heads in their hands and stood up in disbelief. Mrs. Jem, who had been worried about her husband, rushed out of the side door and shook her husband. Viscount Savin was stunned, looking at Jem who was foaming at the mouth, and didn't know what to say. Is it really okay to poison the deputy speaker in front of everyone in the council hall? At this time, a light came on, and the words on the light bulb were illuminated on the wall behind the podium. The city of Fabreau does not allow the emergence of a speaker, the expectation of a certain outstanding citizen.